anyway, I just want to point out, and like, it's so wrong. Anyway, we're about to get to a point where like he's just saying things that are so wrong, and I'm gonna be so angry. But
Yeah, I think so. All right, let's get that.
And so the challenge for the defender of the argument will be to show some sort of asymmetry between the past and the future, such that these arguments show the past to be finite, but do not apply to the future. And I think such an asymmetry is to be found in the tensed theory of time, which treats temporal becoming as an objective and real feature of the world, as opposed to a tenseless theory of time, according to which all events in time and space, whether past, present, or future, are all equally real and existent. And I think given this tensed theory of time, which I've written on extensively, that establishes an asymmetry between past and future that will undo these arguments.
I'd like to ask people who believe.
Wait. Go on then, you go.
No. Okay, well, firstly, I mean, we should at least just note at the beginning that it's very significant. If, in order for his argument to succeed, it requires a tensed view of time. That is very significant because there's a slight majority for a tenseless view of time within like philosophy of physics, within metaphysics, and certainly among scientists. So, I mean, that's at least a cost for his argument, that he has to assume a monumentally controversial view towards which there are independent arguments, or independent objections rather, like from truth making and from special and general relativity and things like that. So that's significant, that he has to assume this particular view in order for his argument to succeed. I just wanted to point that out. It makes it much less modest. It decreases the probability that it succeeds.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that like that's just like totally wrong, right? Again, you address this in your article. Like your article is explicitly cast in tensed terms. You ask, how many events will there be? Like, of how many events or how many days is it true that that day or event will occur or will elapse? That is a tensed notion. That's perfectly kosher under tensed views. Even if time is tensed, you can ask, for instance, suppose over the next week, over the next 7 days, I'm going to count one number per day. We can now ask, how many numbers are such that I will count them? Okay, even if presentism is true, even if a tense view is true, we can still count that. The answer is 7. 7 numbers are such that I will count them. Tomorrow I'm going to count 1, the next day I'm going to count 2, the next day I'm going to count 3, and so on. So even if there's a tensed view of time, you can still numerate these events that will occur. That's all that you need for your argument to get up and running. Because if you can numerate the events that will occur, then we can ask how many events will occur along the entire span of an endless future. The only sensible answer is Aleph null or Aleph null, an actually infinite number of events. And of course, that means that an endless future is an actually infinite collection. Yeah, that's the thrust of it. And why is that? Well, because, I mean, imagine an endless counter who counts 1 tomorrow, 2 the next day, 3 the next day, 4 the next day, and they never stop counting. Each natural number is such that there's going to be some future day or other at which the counter counts it. And the counter is going to, at some point or other, get through each of the natural numbers, right? Pick 2 million, the counter is going to get to 2 million in 2 million days. Pick 4 billion, the counter is going to get to 4 billion, and so on. So each natural number is such that the counter is going to get there at some point along the endless future. But there are Aleph null many natural numbers, right? And so each of Aleph null many natural numbers are such that the counter will count them. And since the number of natural numbers is equanumerous with the number of future days here, because, it's one number per day, these are put in one-to-one correspondence, it just follows that the number of days that will occur along the endless future is Aleph null, because it's equanumerous with a collection which has Aleph null many members.
Yeah, exactly. Like tense on its own doesn't introduce a relevant asymmetry. I mean, it's just like switching from has occurred to will occur doesn't have any implications about how many there are, like how you count them or anything like that. It's just completely irrelevant. And actually, just if you think about tense on its own, the straightforward like tense logic that's like the basic kind of like bedrock tense logical theory, there are like mirror theorems to it, which mean that you can swap systematically future and past tense operators in formulas, and a theorem is going to remain a theorem after that operation. It just means that like it's like it's a symmetry meta principle that shows you that like this it's not asymmetry. It's not an asymmetric theory. It's a symmetric theory by definition. Like it's as symmetric as you could possibly imagine. So tense on its own has no asymmetry to it. But in particular, there's no relevant metaphysical asymmetry if by tense theory, I think Craig means like one where there's an ontological distinction between the past and the future, and there's objective becoming, and roles from the past to the future or whatever. But okay, and it's like you said, we explicitly anticipate this in the paper and like addressed it. It's like, okay, if you want that view, let's just play with that view then. So like, if you think future events don't exist yet, but you think they will do because like this isn't the end of time and time goes on forever, how many events that don't yet exist but will do? How many counting events are there that don't yet exist but will do? You just say the question, and whatever whatever metaphysical view you have, I'll just incorporate that into my question. I'm still asking the same question. Well, give me a number, right? It doesn't matter if you like, well, but they don't exist yet. Cool, they don't exist yet. Cool.
Yeah,
got
you can still count
How many
them.
of them don't exist
Yeah.
yet? So I think it's just crazy if you give any other number than the one that you just described, that pairing them up with the natural numbers. That's the only way to do it. Like, what else are you doing
Yeah.
here? And sometimes
Yeah,
Craig
exactly.
says the number is 0, and sometimes he says there is no number, and then so it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, there is a number, right?
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah,
I think all this is total nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. And again, note for the audience that when we're asking how many days or how many events there will be, right, we're asking about the number of days later than the present day. We're not asking about how many days there will have been between today and the moving now as time progresses, or like how many days will have been completed between today and the moving now as time progresses. Those are indeed, right, potential infinites, in the sense of the number of elements in that collection, which is like that growing collection between here and now as the moving now progresses.
Yeah.
The number of events in that collection is always finite, and it's always increasing without bound. But that's not the question that we're asking, right? That's not the question. The question is posed in the simple future tense. We're asking how many events or days will occur. And if the future is endless, right, then aleph null many days will occur. And that's not implying that there's ever going to come a point in time when like infinitely many days have been completed, right, between now and the future, right? Just as the fact that there are like aleph null many numbers greater than 5 doesn't imply that there's some number like infinitely greater than 5, right? That doesn't change the fact that each of infinitely many days is such that it will occur at some point in the endless future, just as each of infinitely many natural numbers is some finite distance from the number 5. The way that kind of makes this made this self-evident to me was just by thinking about the positive x-axis, right? So you have the origin, that's where the x-axis meets the y-axis. So that's the origin, and then you've got the positive x-axis. Sorry for the audience, this is going to look like the negative x-axis, but I can't do it. I can't do it in my mind for you guys. I have to do it for me. So yeah, so this is the origin, and then it's the positive x-axis. If the future is endless and the origin is like the now, right? Then the future days, that is just perfectly modeled by the positive x-axis. It just goes out all the way, all that way, right? And you could just ask how many, if we're talking about like unit intervals, like 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on, how many unit intervals are along that x-axis? The answer is obvious. It's aleph null, right? You have the one from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on for each natural number. That's just what the endless future is modeled by. In order for the future to be endless, it has to go on, that the x-axis has to like go on all the way out there. We're not saying that those events exist. We're just saying that each of the points along this x-axis at some point or another will transpire, will occur. And again, we're not saying that there's like some point on the x-axis that is infinitely distant from the present, and from the perspective of which you can look back and say that there have been like infinitely many unit intervals between that point and the origin. We're not saying that. We're just saying that the number of unit intervals to the right of this origin is aleph null. That's just like saying the number of days later than today is aleph null. Again, we're not saying that there's going to come some day in the future and you can look back and say that infinitely many days have elapsed between then and now. We're not saying that. So if you model this along, and suppose you don't model this along the x-axis, right? Suppose instead of going out all the way on the x-axis, it like comes to an end at some point, like it goes to like 3 billion. Well, then we're no longer modeling an endless future. Then the future is going to come to an end in 3 billion days. That's going to be the last point in time. So it can't come to an end. It has to be modeled by the x-axis. That is inescapable. And what that means is that we get infinitely many future days under this model, because there are infinitely many unit intervals, and those are just like corresponding to the future days. So I just want to say, like, there's no escaping this for Craig, at least. There's no escaping this for Craig. the endless future is an actual infinite. It's an actually infinite collection. It's a collection which has members which can be put in one correspondence with the natural numbers. There's no getting around that. So long as you think that like these facts about the future and how many days there will be are determinate, like it's determinately now the case. You could have this like radical open future view where there's like just no determinate fact of the matter about how many days there will be.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But then I think on that view, you'd have to say it's also indeterminate whether the future is endless or not.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be no fact about that either.
I think you'd probably have to say something like that, yes. In which case, like, God's promises aren't really going to make much sense. And also, like, you're going to have to say that in order for this to be consistent with Craig's argument, he's going to have to say, like, not only is it indeterminate, but it's, like, either necessarily indeterminate, right? Or if it's not necessarily indeterminate and it could be determinate, in any world in which it's determinate, there's a finite future. But like again, it seems eminently possible that it could determinately be the case that the future is endless. So and yet in order for him to run his argument, he has to deny that. So anyway, my point is that and of course, you know, Craig hates open theism. So like you're gonna have to go open theism if you go this route. And the vast majority of theists and Christians are not going to want to do that. Okay. That's my spiel. I hope that I get very. This is one of the most triggering things for me nowadays when people say, and then this future is a potential infinite, because it's so clearly not. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, get ready to be massively true. I'm going to rewind it a little bit so we can hear Chiric's joke, and I think actually there's a bit earlier on where like Craig says something and Chiric like gets all excited because he wants to say this joke that he's about to say now. And this is gonna really trigger you. So I'm just gonna rewind a little bit so we can hear the whole thing.
Theory of time, according to which all events in time and space, whether past, present, or future, are all equally real and existent. And I think given this tense theory of time, which I've written on extensively, that establishes an asymmetry between past and future that will undo these arguments.
I'd like to ask people who believe in the tenseless theory of time, when did you come to believe in the tenseless theory of time? Very much. At one point you did not believe it, and now you do. When did that happen? So, yes, it seems I don't see any theological or philosophical problem, Bill.
What? Oh my god! When did that happen?
Oh, Frank Chiric, you are so bad at this. You are not suited to have these conversations. You don't know what you're talking about.
I also like how he called it the tense list. I also like how he said the tense list view.
Yeah, he muddled the delivery of his joke even because he was so excited. He was there like, yes, I get to say this cool ponage thing that I say to people. It's so bad, and it's just like, why don't you? Instead of just like, I don't know, reading like people that you already agree with or something, if you're interested in what the tenseless theory of time is, why don't you read Hugh Mellor's Real Time 2, right? Which is like the in the 90s like definitive like a B theory exposition book just about what the B theory is, how to understand it, like the sensible you don't have to agree with it or anything he says, right? But at least you'll know what someone who believes in the B theory thinks, right? And the whole point well, let me just say one other little thing. It's just that like the B theorist has ways of talking about stuff. It's like it's an account of time, right? But it's so they're basically saying, look, when people talk in tenses, that's reducible to some more fundamental talk that's tenseless. And like he gives like effectively a translation manual. I mean, this is already implicit back in the work of Pryor in the 50s and 60s. But like, you know, when someone says such and such is earlier, then when someone says this is past, right? Like my trip to the dentist is it's past. I'm come out the other side of it now, and it was future, and then it was present, but now it's past. So talking in A theory terms. Well, a B theorist is going to say something like, well, the time that you're saying that sentence is later than the time at which you were in the dentist's chair. That's what it means for a B theorist, for something to be past, right? When you're referring to something past, it's like an index between the time that you're speaking and the event in question. So like, there you go, there's a manual that you can have for sense. So if Frank Chiric said to a B theorist, when did you become a B theorist? He's going to say, well, like there was a time where like there's an event in my past where like I read Hugh Mellor's book or something, and like that changed my mind about it. He's going to but then you're saying that it changed from one state to another. And it's be like, yeah, it's a theory of time. Like you take all of that stuff, like there is a string of events, and like, you know, all I don't believe in is that like tense is fundamental to the nature of time. doesn't mean I don't believe in events. Doesn't mean I don't think change happens, right? Like change, there's a B-theoretic account of change, right? It's like a proposition being true on one earlier time and then false on a later time, or the other way around, right? That's what change means for a B-theory. Like, there's nothing here. This is a complete, like, it's like the worst possible objection to a B-theorist. It's crazy. It's like if I said something like, aha, Christians, well, how do you explain the fact that, like, God doesn't exist or something? They'd be like, on our theory, he does. What are you talking about? Like, doesn't even engage with the theory. That's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. So Frank Turek, you probably will never hear this, but like, please stop. You just stop doing this. You're not suited to it. You don't understand what you're talking about. It's crazy. So bad. Anyway, that triggered me loads. What over to you? I'm sure it triggered you as well.
Yeah, no, I just honestly, it's just like oh man. I mean, you did that really well. I mean, I was just gonna say at the beginning, you said all he has to do is read like a proponent of the B theory. What I want to say is all he has to do is just read, right? I mean, like, like if he had read like Craig's works on this, he would know how ludicrous that sounded. Like if he had even read people who agree with him on the matter, he would even understand. So it's like, don't just read like people who disagree with you. I mean, do that, yes, but read. I mean, that's a minimum that he could do. So yeah,
I'm surprised that Craig laughed and didn't just say, "Oh, hold on, no, you shouldn't be going around saying that. You sound like an absolute plonker if you say that. That's ridiculous." But he just laughs as if the ponage was delivered, and like, oh God, damn it!